I'll tell you, you weren't the first. Jiggs was the first play-by-play voice. Roy Story came in for a season, and then it was Bob Miller time. I mean, how much are you just drinking this in and celebrating this, this accomplishment that the Los Angeles Kings are on the precipice of achieving?
Well, like everybody, I am really enjoying it. I'm so happy for our fans who have been through a lot of disappointments, and they've been loyal. They've supported this team down through the years when things weren't going so well, and now to see them at Staples last night, and I'm hearing from people just loving the fact that not only the Kings one win away, but it's the way the Kings have played in this playoff year.
How did it feel to see Wayne Gretzky come back for last night's pregame festivities?
Oh, it was great, for the ceremonial face-off, and I saw him at a reception before the game, and he was with us the last time, 19 years ago, that the Kings were in the final, and even he, I've heard him on interviews, and even he said, I'm amazed at the way this team is playing. If they win tomorrow night, they've tied the Oilers with the best record to win a cup in NHL history at 16-2.
Hey, Bob, I want to go back in your history a little bit as well and talk about, Bob Miller, play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Kings. Can we go back to the Jack Kent Cooke era for a couple of seconds here?
Sure.
What were the first interviews like with you and the late owner of the Los Angeles Kings?
Well, I had said he put Chick Hearn, the longtime Hall of Fame Laker announcer, in charge of finding a hockey announcer, and I've always kidded. I don't think Chick knew a puck from an English muffin, but he was going to pick a hockey announcer. So in 1972, he called me. I sent him some material, and he said, "You're my pick. You're going to get the job." And I thought, great. And then months went, and I never heard anything. And I called him, and he said, I was out of town, and Mr. Cook picked somebody else. And I was devastated because I thought, here was my chance. But I was doing University of Wisconsin hockey then, and Bob Johnson, later great coach in the NHL, was there. And they won the NCAA championship my last year there in '73. And so far, that's the only championship team I've been with. So it was fine that I stayed there. And then the next year, I sent Chick some more material, and he called me and said, come on out, we're going to talk about your contract. But Mr. Cook would do that. If you pick somebody, he'd pick somebody else just to show you I'm still the boss, I'm still running this team.
Now, what were the conversations like? This is a follow-up. What were the conversations like with Jack Kent Cooke when, he wanted you and your late color voice, the voice actually of Peter Puck as well, Dan Avey, to work the automobile manufacturer Datsun into the broadcasts?
Yeah, he called us into his office one day and said, I want you to run 13 30-second commercials per period. What do you think of that? And I said, well, Mr. Cook, they didn't stop the game then for commercials. I said, we're running 4 now, and it's sometimes difficult to do that. And Datsun was our main sponsor. Now it's Nissan. But he said, well, then, for instance, you will mention the sponsor in a different way. You will say, there's Marcel Dion scooting down the ice like a Datsun. What do you think? And I said, Mr. Cook, I could never imagine saying that once, let alone 80 times a year. And he went ballistic. I mean, get out of my office. I'm sick of you. Do you know how many people want your job? Get out of my sight. And I stood up and he said, sit down. And he was just going crazy. And
that's so funny.
So he said, at 2 o'clock, you better get back in here and tell me how you're going to do it. And so at 2 o'clock, I came back in and he said, well, and I said, well, we could say this is the Datsun Kings hockey broadcast. The score on the Datsun Kings scoreboard is the Kings 2, the Blackhawks 1. And he looked at me and he said, my, aren't you a brilliant fellow? And I said, I honestly mean this. I worked for him for 6 years, and I said the only reason I lasted is he was out of town for 4 of those years.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. While he was out of town, didn't you have to do something with Bob Murdoch?
Bob Murdoch, yes.
When George McGuire was the general manager, because I guess he was approaching too many bonuses, so he didn't.
Well, either that or he didn't want Bob Murdoch playing, Mr. Cook, and he was in Las Vegas because he was going through a divorce, trying to not give his wife 50% of what he had. So he listened to the game. She got about $47 million anyway. But so he was over there, and George McGuire came in to me one night at 6:00 on a game night, and he said, "I don't want you mentioning Bob Murdoch's name tonight." And I said, "Okay, well, why isn't he going to play?" "Well, he is going to play." I said, "Well, wait a minute, George. He's going to play, but I can't mention his name." "That's right." I said, "Well, what do you want me to say, folks? I know who has the puck, but I can't tell you." And of course, it was easy to get George upset, and he sat right down to our right from where we did the broadcast. And Murdoch, as I recall, had, at least in my description, had a great game because I just wanted to get George upset. So I'd say, "Oh, what a great play by Murdoch. What a great..." And I'd see George pounding the desk because he knew the next phone call I get is going to be from Jack Kent Cook. But that's how crazy it got. Don't mention a guy's name who's going to play.
That's crazy. Hey, Bob, so reading in the LA Times, I guess there was a campaign by LA Kings fans online that wanted to find a way for you and Jim Fox to call the cup-clinching game for the LA Kings. And from what I gather, there's going to be some sort of way where you and Jim are going to go back and broadcast like the final moments of this game if they clinch?
Well, what we're going to do, and I just found out about this after the game last night, they'd been working on it, we are going to record the play-by-play of the game, and then they're going to make that available to Kings fans later on. We can't do it live because of the rights fee situation with NBC, but we're going to do that, and then they'll make a DVD or something available for Kings fans to purchase, whether it's for charity or whatever, but it'll give us a chance to describe the closing moments in the cup-clinching game.
Would it just be the closing moments, or would you do the whole game?
No, I think we'll do the whole game because
wow.
then we'd have highlights of
awesome.
the whole game and record it. And so at least we're going to get to do that. We've been doing post-game shows on TV right after the game, and so fans have enjoyed that too. But this will be fun to do the game tomorrow night, even though it's not live on the air.
Hey, Bob, when you look back at all the games you called, all the teams you've been part of, Triple Crown line, the Gretzky era, this incarnation of the Los Angeles Kings, maybe it was something as crazy as the Randy Holt incident against the Philadelphia Flyers. What are some of the more significant L.A. moments that come to Bob Miller's mind?
Well, you know, we've had some success, and I think a lot of people forget about that. Great years in 74-75 with Rogie Vachon in goal, 105 points, still the Kings' record for points in the season. Got into a couple of great playoff runs in 76 and 77 against the Boston Bruins. And then, of course, in 82, the great Miracle on Manchester comeback against the Edmonton Oilers, down 5-0 and get 5 in the third and win it in overtime and go on to win that series against the Edmonton Oilers, who were so heavily favored. And then, personally, I've had the chance to describe Wayne Gretzky passing Gordie Howe as the all-time scoring leader, and then 4 years later passing Howe as the all-time goal-scoring leader. So, you know, those have been highlights. And, of course, the 93 run to the Stanley Cup, the series before the Stanley Cup final that year against Toronto, just a classic series that was so good, with Wendell Clark, the captain of the Leafs, stepping up, and Gretzky with the Kings, and that Game 7 in Toronto. It's just I'll never forget that series, and so there have been some great moments in Kings history.
Last one for me, Bob. You know, we've heard so much about Quick, we've heard so much about Kopitar, we've heard so much about Dustin Brown. Who's your unsung hero during what everybody assumes will be a Stanley Cup championship run for the Kings?
Well, I think probably a guy like Dwight King. He's brought up during the middle of the season from the minor leagues, from the American League, and at one point had 5 goals in 5 games, and he was contributing, and it was nice to see guys like that. And Jordan Nolan, his dad, Ted Nolan, I just saw him in the parking lot here. He came in for the game last night. So youngsters like that who had a chance to come in. So there's a bunch of them. It's like Colin Fraser. Colin Fraser starts out, he's got a bad foot, he can't play for a while, and then he gets a chance to play, and he scored a big goal the other day. So, you know, there's been so many contributing. 18 players have scored points for the Kings in these playoffs, and 17 have scored goals. So it's really been a team contribution, and I'm so glad to see all of them contributing and getting a chance to win it.
Now, when it is finally over and the Los Angeles Kings finally win the Stanley Cup, and by the way, today's the anniversary of the NHL granting the 6 expansion teams waving the magic wand over them, and they joined the National Hockey League. LA, of course, one of them. Oakland, Minnesota, Philadelphia, St. Louis, LA, and Pittsburgh. When that moment finally arrives, and 3, 2, 1, the Los Angeles Kings win the Stanley Cup, who are you going to think of? Who will come to Bob Miller's mind?
Yeah, I've been thinking of a lot of people. Jack Kent Cooke is one of them. He would relish this. I don't know if he ever thought it would happen. And I think about guys like Jake Milford, who was our general manager for a while and has passed on, and what a great person he was. And guys like George McGuire and Dan Avey, you mentioned him earlier, he's passed on. And so many people and Kings alumni from around the country who have emailed and said, we'll be there, we want to see it, because I think some of them thought that may never happen in L.A. So a lot of people have come to mind, but the most are the patient Kings fans who are going to have a chance, I hope, tomorrow night to celebrate.